No, guys, I'm cold. I'm an alcoholic. That's not entirely true. I normally don't have a problem speaking in public at all. I've never been nervous to speak in public. But somehow, when you have to sit and talk to strangers and friends about a weakness and a disease like this and expose yourself, it can be very nerve-wracking. So I'm incredibly nervous because, I've got to lay it all out there on the line for you. So driving here today and taking the turn off into Scotborough, my hands started sweating, and I remember that turn off to go right, to go up to the house on the hill, or turn left to come down here to a meeting. And I haven't come down this side since I've come down once, but to go and visit up the hill. All those feelings of insecurity and fear when I was inactive came rushing back. And it's a feeling and an experience that I don't ever want to feel again. It took me straight back to what it was like, that dark, sad, lonely place where I had to rely on alcohol and prescription medication to get through the day, to get through life, because I couldn't do it like a normal person. I had to rely on these other things. And it's strange because I'm 13 months now, just on 13 months, and I've shared once only at my home group. I'm actually chairman of my home group now, which is strange. I don't think many people thought that I would even go to meetings, let alone chair them. But surprise, surprise. It's good to be reminded what it was like. Sometimes I'm guilty of forgetting that I'm an alcoholic. It's the arrogance in me. It's a character defect that was pointed out to me often when I was in treatment. I suffer from it and I have to check myself often with it. But it's good to be reminded because I don't like to feel scared and I don't like to be ashamed. And that's exactly what happens when I remember about this disease. And it reminds me how important it is to stay clean and sober. Getting out there from treatments and getting back into the real world and working and having to deal with life on life's terms wasn't easy. It wasn't a walk in the park. And I tried 2 avenues of working for somebody, and I worked hard and I put my head down, and I was disappointed twice. I just wasn't making enough money to live and to survive. I fortunately had friends that took me in and let me live with them. I didn't have to pay rent, so everything I earned, it would go on food and whatnot. And these are bitter pills to swallow, because before I lost everything, and before I checked into rehab, I did quite well. But through my drinking and my abusive past with medication, I lost everything. I lost my marriage, I lost my business, I lost the respect of my family and my friends. And I still could not mentally get past that. I always wanted to be that person again, and have my house again, and have the car I used to drive, and have the beautiful wife again. And I had lost all of those things. And now to go back and be humble again, these were the things that would trigger off wanting to drink. The depression, trying to escape from reality. But I didn't. I knew I was prepared for it. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew. I used to sit in treatment, and there was the main guy. He didn't share often, he didn't speak often, he didn't counsel often. But when he came in, and he used to say, "Listen, because a lot of you are not listening. You'll hear, but you are not listening." But I used to listen. I used to listen to that because I knew it was going to be harder for me. I was arrogant, I was stubborn, but that arrogance and stubbornness was something inside of me that was going to help me get over being an alcoholic. I'll always be an alcoholic. I will always be an alcoholic. I didn't want to believe it at that point, and it took a year to understand that this is a disease that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. But I hated it, and I was ashamed of it. And I fought it for a very long time. You don't, especially, like the things for me, trying to be honest with people and to tell people, especially in the business world. When I was looking at the first job that I applied for, the guy that set me up to go in for an interview, he knew I was an alcoholic and he heard my story, and he set me up with an interview, and he said, just be honest with the owner of the company. And I was, and it cost me the fact that it cost me getting the job. I didn't get it because although the guy appreciated my honesty and he appreciated the fact that I'd been sober and I'd been to treatments and I'd sought help, that he didn't want to be responsible for me in case I relapsed. And this was an obstacle I was going to have to overcome. And I left that day completely dejected. I was obviously unemployed still. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I didn't drink. I didn't go and pick up. I didn't take a prescription pill to deal with the anxiety, to deal with the stress. I did three very important things, I think. It was I ate well, and I trained in the gym. I lived a healthy, clean lifestyle, and because it's so difficult, it's so easy to fall back into self-pity and wallowing is what I used to do when I was an active. I would close the curtains in my apartment and I would drink alone by myself and escape reality because I didn't want to get out there and face people. I was embarrassed of myself. I looked terrible. I knew that when people saw me, that had known me before I got really, really bad into my addiction, that they would look at me and say, geez, look at you, you're looking terrible. Because I knew that when I would look in the mirror. I'm going to jump around a little bit because, this is only my second share and I'm nervous as hell. And when I say one thing, it'll trigger off a memory somewhere else. But when I came finally into treatment, it was after I had reached rock bottom. My rock bottom should have been when my wife left and she took my little boy away from me. He was 3 months old. And still there, and it was because of my drinking and because I was doing all the pills and whatnot to try and deal with my business going insolvent, and I was lying about it because I didn't want her to think I was losing all my money, and I was trying to keep a lifestyle that I couldn't afford. I should have bitten the bullet and just said, everything goes, I need to be modest, get a cheaper house, get a cheaper car, but I didn't. I tried to live a lifestyle that I couldn't afford. I lived beyond my means, and I drank to deal with the stress, and eventually I lost everything anyway. But when she left, I decided, well, I'm going to show everybody now. You've left me for drinking and taking pills, well, now I'm going to show you what I'm really capable of. And I went to a dark and dangerous place. I do not know how I survived. I do not know how I'm alive to this day. I was never arrested for drinking and driving, and I don't know why, because there wasn't a day that I was sober. Not one day. I couldn't go to the shopping mall to go and get groceries without having to swallow 3 or 4 anxiety pills, because I would get agoraphobic. I would be standing in the line, and I would just, people in front of me, I could not wait to get to the till to pay for, and I would be desperate by the time I got there, get into my car, shove something under my tongue and down my throat, and literally drive home, get into my estate, and pull out something to drink, and to get through the day. That's where I was. The day came. It was about 18 months, 2 years after my ex-wife left. I used to have my son every Sunday, and I lived in an estate, so I could just drive around. When he wouldn't sleep, he was still a toddler. When he couldn't sleep, I would put him in my car in the baby seat, and I would drive slowly around the estate, and that used to relax him, and he would nod off his afternoon nap, which he had to have. And I would take a quart of beer, and I would pour it into a coffee flask, a big coffee flask, because I didn't want my son to see a bottle. Sees a beer bottle, and he's with his mom, he says, "Daddy's juice," you never know what. So obviously I had to hide the fact that I was drinking because he picked up things. And I remember driving it. This was the day that I decided I needed help. I always knew I needed help, but this was the day that I decided I was going to get help. And I was driving around, and I thought, let me just turn around and check my son to see if he's fallen asleep. And I turned around behind me, and there was this little boy, and he smiled at me with the most beautiful smile that only a father can understand. And like with love and adoration and like you're my hero. And I looked down and in between my legs I had a quart of beer. And I just felt like Mike Tyson had punched me in the stomach. And I poured the beer out the window and I cried like a baby, and that afternoon I took him back to his mom. And the first thing I did was drive to my nearest pub and get totally hammered. Phoned my mom overseas because, I'm a big baby. I've got to phone my mom. And couldn't do it. I'm a grown man. And, I was broken. I phoned my mom. I was crying. I'd lied to everybody about my drinking. They all knew. But because they lived overseas and they were not with me, I used to Skype them and I used to use the excuse because I couldn't go 20 minutes, half an hour without having a drink. I would start shaking. I'm shaking now, but it's because I'm nervous. But I could not hold a pen, I couldn't write, and I would Skype my family overseas and I would say, listen, can you turn the camera off because I don't want to eat my data up. But I would do that so they couldn't see me picking up my beer and drinking while I was having my once-a-week family chat. So I confessed to everybody about all the lies. I was in business with my brother-in-law and my sister, and the company was failing because instead of concentrating on the business and doing what needed to be done, I was drinking. And the company folded. Because my company folded initially before my divorce. My sister and them came in from overseas, pumped a whole bunch of pounds into my business, became partners with me, and still, I still drank, even though I was given that lifeline. I was such a coward, and I was a liar. And I lied to them about it. And I was living in a complete dream world. I always thought I would survive, I would get through it, I'd pull something out the bag because I'm a survivor. But this time it didn't happen. And so I affected all these lives, All their money was gone, all my money was gone, everything. And I confessed to everybody, and I asked for help and I was sent into treatment. It wasn't a walk in the park for me. When I went there, I was desperate. I really wanted help and I wanted to stop drinking. But it didn't happen for me like it happened for a lot of people. I was in trouble a lot. I was constantly in concern groups. And the sad part about it for me was that I really wanted to fit in. I wanted to be sober. But my personality was just completely off the wall. I just didn't. I was a square peg in a round hole. And that's classic alcoholic behavior. I eventually left after 4 months, and I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to stay sober. My family didn't believe I was going to stay sober. They've all, obviously, I've got lots of messages, and family have said, you've shown us, you've really done something here, and we didn't believe it, and they're humbled by it. But I left treatment, and I'm thinking, geez, I still don't know if I'm going to do it. But I made myself a promise. And that promise was, I'm never going to promise anybody that I'm not going to drink or I'm not going to relapse, because I don't know. And I've always made promises to people. I've always said, I'm going to do this in a couple of beers, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. And that was classic, and especially in business when my business was failing. I would get drunk the night before, and I'd have all these wonderful plans in my head and my brain about, tomorrow I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do this and I'm going to see that person, I'm going to fix that I haven't been, And I would just end up getting so trashed and then dropping a sleeping tablet, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, shaking and convulsing because I was having DTs again. And I would say, okay, I'll just have one drink to calm me down, and then I'll hit the day. And that one drink turned into 2, turned into 3, and then I was confident, tomorrow I'll do it. And I would be psyched up because that alcohol would take away all the nervousness I was feeling, and I was really going to go and conquer the world the next day. Years later, and I still didn't do anything about it. And so that's why I said when I came out of treatment, I didn't make any promises to anybody. I said, my family, they were so scared when I left rehab. They all were worried that I was going to relapse within a month, within 2. And I didn't. I took each day as it came. And there was one occasion only where I had to white knuckle it. I came out of rehab just 2 weeks before my 40th birthday, and my family flew over from overseas, and we all went to my favorite place on earth, which is the Umfolozi Game Reserve. It's the place I used to go and escape to. If things were going bad, I would jump in my 4x4 and off to the game reserve with a couple of cases of beers, drive around, just drink from whatever time in the morning until whatever time at night. And this was the first time I was going to go there now, and I couldn't take alcohol with me. And that was a place, it was a trigger. And I went there, and everybody else was drinking. And they were like, oh, no, they were all worried. And I said, guys, please, yes, it's my birthday. Yes, you know, you've all come from overseas. You don't have a drinking problem. I do. And there was one moment where everybody went on a game drive, and I was alone in the bush camp by myself. And I went to open the fridge to get something to drink, a juice, and there's just beers and whatever inside there. And that was the one fleeting whoa moment that I had. I was like 2 weeks out of rehab, and I looked at this, and I said, no one will know. No one will know. And I was so anxious to have a drink that one time. It's my birthday. I'm 40. I can do this. And as quickly as I felt that, I've got a thing in my head to trigger off another feeling to stop me from drinking, and that is a memory of my son. That is, people say that you've got to do this for yourself, and I understand that. You do. You have to stop drinking for yourself. But you've got to respect yourself, and you've got to love yourself. And I did not love myself, and I did not respect myself. I had to use something else, and that was my son. I needed that to keep me on the straight and narrow until I could love myself and have respect for myself. So I would think of my son and the fact that I have to be a father to him. I have to be responsible, and if I don't, I will lose him for good. So that thought comes into my brain, the fridge gets closed, and I carry on about my day. It gets less and less and less. I've had, as I say, a couple of disappointments, and I started working for another company, and it didn't last long. They tried to open up a branch in Natal as a Joburg company, and I worked for a couple of months on commission only, and it wasn't enough, and they eventually shut the branch down in December. Once again, I was unemployed. It was Christmas, people coming over, and that's the classic time to relapse. But it didn't. You know, I remember something it was either on the wall or the fridge at my treatment facility. It says, doesn't matter, I can't quote word for word, but something along the lines of, no matter what you're going through or how bad it is, taking a drink or something will only make it worse. Something along those lines. And I remember that, and I thought, okay, so this is not a good time, and if I drink now, can you imagine what my family would do? I mean, they would be heartbroken. And, you know, I would also obviously be heartbroken. It's just not worth it. So, but in that same, and I battled in the beginning with my higher power to pray. I used to be a Christian, and then I became agnostic, if you will. But then I had to dig deep, because I always wanted to do everything on my own. Like, I had the power. I had this. I couldn't do it. No one else is going to do it for me. I felt it was a cop-out to hand it over to somebody else. I had to do this on my own. But eventually, I learned, and I handed over to my higher power. And that higher power for me is, I love nature. I'm a scuba diver for 20 years. I love the bush, the African bush. And something powerful, something fantastic and wonderful has created this. And that to me is my higher power. So I'll get on my knees, and that's what I do every single day now. And ever since I was in treatment and I came out of treatment, on my knees every single day, in the morning and at night. And I prayed for the things that I lack. I still lack it, patience and tolerance. All those things, to be kind to people and to do things for people without expecting anything in return, because that's not me. If I do something for somebody, I want something back. Otherwise, I don't want to do it for you. Completely selfish and self-obsessed. And I knew that trying to do those things would be fake for me, because if I did it, I'm just trying to do it to achieve something. So when I pray, I say, please, can you change my mindset? So So that when I do these things, I'm doing it for the right reasons and not to get something in return. You know, within 2 weeks of being literally unemployed, an old colleague of mine, a guy that, unbeknown to me, my father had asked him about 18 months ago if he would give me a job. And he said no. And this is a guy I've known for 15 years. I didn't know that my father had asked him to employ me, and I didn't know he had said no until quite recently. And he said no, and the reason was because I've got an alcohol problem. 2 weeks after I was literally unemployed again, this same guy came to me and offered to finance my new business. I was just playing with ideas. I'd been working on something for months, something I'd wanted to start, but I couldn't raise the capital. And I was just talking to him about it, and he said, I'll give you the money, but I want a partnership with you. And I was like, hey, listen, I didn't ask you. I'm not telling you because I want anything from you. And he said, no, I want to be a part of this. And only when I spoke to my father later on during the day, I said, you know what, this project of mine, I can actually do it now. So-and-so's. And that's when my father told me, do you know that he wouldn't give you a job 18 months ago? And this same guy is now my business partner. It's the gifts of recovery. You know, I couldn't afford an apartment. I was living with a friend of mine, and now I'm starting to look, and I need a place that's close to my fellowship. I need a place that's close to my son. It's an expensive area where I live, where my ex-wife lives. And I was literally about to, give up, maybe, ask for help again, go live with a friend of mine. A flat came up right, literally 300 meters from my fellowship. I can walk to my fellowship. Perfect spare room for family and my son, right on the beach. And all the owner wanted was to cover his rates and levies, because the holiday makers that were in there before had ruined the flat. They didn't want to lease it out over holidays. And he just wanted somebody there to cover those expenses. I could never afford an apartment like that, ever, for if they had to ask for the actual going rate. I handed that over to my higher power. I needed a place to live. And I let go. I wasn't trying to control the situation. All the major things, it's the same thing that happened with my work now. The moment I let go and said, I can't do it on my own. Whatever you've got planned for me, I'll accept it. This journey that I'm going on, I'll accept it. Even if it's going to disappoint me bitterly, there's a plan to it. I'll need to be disappointed in this one instance, because where that door closes, something else is going to open for me. I don't know what it is, but just help me to accept it. And it felt good to take that pressure and that weight off my shoulders. And those things have happened for me. It hasn't happened quickly at all. And then, straight after my 1 year, which was a year ago, I was riding on a pink cloud. I was like, hey, 1 year, ha, everybody that doubted, things are going great. And I had a bad 2 weeks. I started doubting myself again. I didn't want to go to meetings. And something had to happen. And I don't have a sponsor. I'm 13 months. The last sponsor I had in treatment. I think I scared him. I don't know, against all odds, how I've stayed sober, but I needed to get involved in some kind of service. I was the milk and coffee guy for most of the time. Someone came into my path, a young guy that needed help, and I'm now a sponsor. First time, I'm getting help from senior members in our fellowship, and I've been asked now to chair the meetings, and I needed that. I needed to get back involved again because I was slipping, forgetting I'm alcoholic, thinking I can do it on my own. And the best way to, when you're slipping, the best way to find your, determination again, or find out what it's all about, is to help. The 12th step, to help somebody else that's in need. And when this young guy, when I was talking to him and helping him, he asked me, he says, why are you doing this? I've never had this before. He's been into rehab, but he's never had a sponsor. And no one's ever done for him basically what I'm doing for him now. And it's nothing great. It's not nearly as much as what my sponsor gave to me and the time and dedication he gave to me when I was in treatment, because I'm just starting out, I'm still learning. But he was so overwhelmed that I would be there for him, just the fact that my phone's always on, just that it's early hours of the morning and he's in trouble, that I will get in my car and I will go and pick him up. And I explained to him that me helping him is him helping me. It reminds me of where I've come from. It reminds me of what I've gone through and what it's like to be in my early 20s and scared and alone and trapped and addicted. You know, only as I became older, my biggest vice was alcohol, but in my 30s and late 30s and whatnot. But before that, in my 20s, it was the rave scene and drugs and whatnot. So it's all sorts for me. And I'm helping someone else now. One of the ways that I dealt with my addiction, and you know, as it says in the beginning here, this is what worked for me. Not necessarily what works for everybody else. I don't have a respect for alcohol and drugs. It's like I don't have a respect for a person that's going to kill you or hurt you. If you're walking down the street and there's a guy there that he's going to rob you and attack you and eventually kill you and take your life, I don't respect him. I'm scared of him. That's the same way I feel about drugs and alcohol. I don't respect drugs and alcohol, but I'm scared of drugs and alcohol because I know what it can do to me. I'm not a weak person. I never considered myself a weak person. Mentally, I used to be strong. But there's one thing in this life that I have got no control over, and that is alcohol and drugs. That will take me to a place that no human being can take me to. Robs me of everything that I hold dear. Makes me a completely different human being. I will watch the woman of my dreams crying, begging me to stop. And I will feel nothing. I will carry on. You know, one of the hardest things I ever had to watch was my wife driving away with my little boy in the back seat. I'll never forget that image. You know, and that's what I have to think about when I forget how powerful this disease and what you're prepared to let walk out of your life, just so that you can carry on. Because I lied to myself and told everybody I don't have a problem. You know, and I believed it myself. I was my own worst enemy. How could I have a problem? Arrogance. Not me. I'm better than that. Not true. You know, this disease doesn't discriminate. You know, I was in treatment with guys that had come out of Westfield prison, and next to me sitting a top attorney in Durban. Black, white, yellow, gay, straight. Doesn't make a difference. Weak, strong. You know. I came from a good family. My father sits now. My relationship with my family, I'd like to touch on this point. There came a moment after my step 5, and I had to do it. I wrote out the step 4, and then I did my step 5 with my sponsor. And at that moment, literally 10 minutes into my step 5, I was supposed to go home that coming weekend. I'd been in rehab for 7 weeks. I was supposed to go home that weekend after my step 5. See my son, I hadn't seen him. 10 minutes into my step 5, my sponsor just said to me, stop. You have acknowledged, but you haven't accepted. You got to go and redo your step 4 again. I threw a tantrum, ripping off my jersey, punching walls. That's it. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. And my sponsor said to me, just take a couple of minutes, take an hour, think about what you're doing, and then come and talk to me. I didn't even take that long. I was up on the office door, banging away. Someone else opens up, get my sponsor. I want my wallet, I want my keys, I want everything. I want to get out of here. I'm not prepared to listen. And my sponsor came to me and he gave me a questionnaire that my family had filled out. I think maybe they used this as a last resort to, for somebody in that particular frame of mind, like I was in that day. And he said, go and read this, and then come and talk to me. So I had to read now what my family thought of me, that I didn't even know they'd filled this out. Okay? And obviously your family, you have to give permission. So both my 2 sisters gave permission and my mother gave permission, but my father never did. He wrote whatever, and still to this day I don't know what he wrote. But I just read what my sisters and my mother had written. My one sister in particular, I'll never forget the words. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. And there was a lot of other stuff. But those there, I can't tell you what that felt like. Amongst all the other things, seeing it from an outsider now, looking at what people thought of me, because they weren't telling me now, and I was not, they weren't talking to me. This I was reading in black and white off a piece of paper. So you've got to believe it. This is what somebody thinks of you. And I was just crushed. I broke down, I cried like a baby. I said to my sponsor, I don't want to go home. I can't face them. You know? And that's when the penny dropped for me. Some people don't feel that it was, because I still acted out in rehab afterwards, but for me it was a defining moment. My relationship with my family today is completely opposite. Completely opposite. My father has just visited from overseas. He stayed with me for 2 weeks. We did not have one argument. My sister, who wrote, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, is my best friend. We visit each other. I was not welcome in their house. I visit all the time. They send me messages literally daily saying how happy they are. These are the people that I hurt the most. These are the people that would cry themselves to sleep at night. My mom, wondering if I'd got home alive. My dad sitting there, you know. These same people have forgiven me. And I don't deserve it. You know, well, I think I don't deserve it. And I told them, I said, I don't deserve this. And they said, just as long as you are sober and clean and the way you are now, that's enough for us. And I had to make amends with myself. You know, I can't go out there in life and paint myself with the same brush as what I was like when I was inactive. Because if I'm clean and I'm sober, I'm not living that life anymore. And I've got to forgive myself. That was the hardest part, to make amends with myself. You know, I don't want to be tarnished. I will always be an alcoholic, but I'll wear it like a badge of honor now. If I can help people, I will. It's on a need-to-know basis. When I share, and I share in a group like this, you know, it's okay. But I have to pick and choose who I'm going to share it with, especially when it comes to business. This is a reality for me. Some people don't get it. We all get it. We all understand that it's a disease, it's a sickness, just like cancer. There's other people that are limited, that don't know. You know, so I have to be careful. But I am grateful that I've accepted it. I'm grateful that I understand it. I learn something every day. The biggest thing in life that I've had to, that I can say now is I have to have gratitude. I have to have gratitude for everything that I've got. I've never gone without. My friends and my family rallied together when I came out of treatment. I've always had a roof over my head. I've had wheels, food. The funny part is that when I was inactive, I never had enough money. Even though I was earning more, I never had enough money because I was drinking and using. But now, I'm on a pittance of what I had before, but I've always got. I'm always provided for. You know? So my relationship with my ex-wife, this was the biggest problem, one of the biggest things for me, as I was so determined when I came out of treatment, and even after hitting a year, I was going to make amends with her. I had this vision of doing a 1-year share, and out of the crowd, my ex-wife would come holding my child. We forgive you. You know, we forgive you. We'll take you back. It didn't happen. I sat there looking. It didn't happen. She hasn't even acknowledged when I hit a year. She's so angry and so disappointed and so bitter with me that I think that I'm never going to be able to make amends with her, ever. And that for me is the hardest part of my recovery, because if there is one person that I want to make amends with, it's her. Because I robbed her and my son of a normal, happy marriage. I robbed my child of a father that's present every single day. because I chose a beer. Isn't that ridiculous? And only now, looking back, can I realize that. And I have to live with that every single day. And she won't forgive me. Maybe she will in 5 or 10 years' time, but right now, today, she won't. You know? And it's hard, especially when everybody else has. You know? It feels good to see people and they'll go, whoa, geez, hey, yo, you still, hey, wow. It feels good. I didn't say stay sober because I wanted to prove a point to anybody. I wanted to be sober. Even if people couldn't understand by my actions, there's one absolutely powerful thing. You have to want it. You can do rehab any way you want. You can do recovery any way you want. But unless you want to be sober, it's going to be very, very difficult. I only had one white knuckle moment when I came out of rehab. The rest of the time, it's been a normal day-to-day life for me. I just don't drink and I don't use because I want to be sober. I want it more than anything. I want it more than my last breath. I want it. And that's the only way I can define or explain why I'm sober and I'm clean. Because by my actions, really, sometimes it wouldn't portray that. But in my heart, in my gut, I never want to get drunk again. I never want to put another pill in my mouth, ever. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me strong. You know? So, my son and I, you know, he'll be 4 years old this June. He spends a couple of nights a week with me now. It's wonderful. I can't describe being a father what it's like. Having that, not being dazed and confused and can't wait to get him back to his mom at 5 o'clock so that I can go and hit the bar so I don't shake like a cold chihuahua. And I couldn't hold a pen in rehab for the first 10 days. I had to have people fill out my documents for me because I couldn't hold a pen. Now I can write. My son's birthday card, my family's Christmas cards, I can actually write. Those little things like that. Anyway, guys, I think I'll end off now. Gratitude for being sober. The things that I have got now that I don't deserve. The love and respect of my friends and my family. The fellowship that I belong to. Even when I walked in there, people thought, oh, this guy's not going to last you that long. And, you know, I'm still there today. Meetings. If I feel like I don't want to go to a meeting, I go to one. Because that's when I need it the most. I'm very, very grateful to be sitting here now, 13 months. And everyone said to me, the first year is actually not that hard. It's the second year where things are going to get difficult for you. You've reached that milestone. So that's my new challenge. Everyone said, oh, the second year is the hardest. So now, the second year, that's my new motivation. Just for today, just for this week, just for this month, just for this year. For me, it's getting to 2 years. And when it gets to 2 years, it'll get to 3, hopefully. But I will still not make a promise to anybody and say that I will never drink again. But if you ask me today, Cole, will you ever drink again? In my heart, I believe no. Because that's how I feel right now. I will not drink again. And if I do drink again, I will have to pick up whatever pieces I've dropped and start again. But I'm so afraid of doing that. Because I remember that hopefully that will keep me sober. So thanks, guys.